It is IDP time in Dynasty Fantasy Football, my friends. I am so excited to get into this video today because IDP specifically is just not covered enough on YouTube from YouTube Fantasy Football Analysts. Defense is definitely not covered enough, and that's why I am the go-to guy for fantasy football defenses. That's what we're doing in Dynasty Fantasy Football now. Today, I am going through the top 20 IDP players in Dynasty Fantasy Football. So please go down there, drop a like on this video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support if you get value from this video today. So before we dive right into these rankings right now, I want to first set the baseline of how we're scoring on this. So IDP Fantasy Football is obviously a relatively obscure way of playing, and everybody's got their own way of scoring in fantasy football. I use IDP 123 and their scoring system, which is 1 point for assisted tackles and quarterback hits, 2-point plays, solo tackles, tackles for loss, 3-point plays, pass defense, forced fumbles, fumble recoveries, safeties, and block kicks, and 6-point plays being sacks, interceptions, and defensive touchdowns. So without further ado, let's get into the top 20 right now. So at number 1 here, I've got Mr. Roquan Smith of the Baltimore Ravens right here. So Roquan Smith is 26 years old, and he's also got a lengthy contract that he just signed with the Baltimore Ravens. So he is there to stay. Roquan Smith, as you can see on the screen, he is just the dude just averages so many tackles. And again, one point per tackle. That's setting the baseline right here. Roquan Smith is a tackling machine right now. So Roquan Smith, I think that when you look at it, 84 tackles, and he's averaging 13.8 fantasy points per game. With the contract he's got, he's safe, and he's on a great defense. Roquan Smith continues to carry that defense forward. At number 2 here, I've got Fred Warner of the San Francisco 49ers, and he's 27 years old. Fred Warner, in my opinion, best linebacker in the league. I love Fred Warner. I've loved him for a long time because, yes, Fred Warner on the screen, like, he's a good player in fantasy football, but it's not always as a result of him just getting lots of tackles. Like Fred Warner, you can see on the screen, he had 82 tackles, but he also had 2.5 sacks. He also had 11 passes deflected, 4 interceptions, 4 forced fumbles. This guy is all over the field because he's an excellent football player, not just a tackle machine. This guy gets after it, man. 14 fantasy points per game. This guy is a stud for many, many years to come. Number 3 and 4, Nick Bolton of the Kansas City Chiefs and Zaire Franklin of the Indianapolis Colts. Nick Bolton's 23, has a bright future on a Super Bowl roster. That's the reality. And he's a big, big asset for this particular fantasy football team. Nick Bolton is just in a situation where if he plays a full season, which he did not in 2023, this guy is going to be a very good linebacker for many years to come in fantasy football and IDP fantasy football. So I like Nick Bolton quite a lot. And then at number 4 with Zaire Franklin, I think he's just in a situation where he's a tackle machine. It's not that his contract is huge or he's got tons of security. He is under contract with Indianapolis, but this guy is just a tackling machine. He's giving you that stable baseline of points right there, and he's going to continue to be the starter. Zaire Franklin, easy pick right here at number 4. TJ Edwards and Devin Lloyd at 5 and 6. TJ Edwards is 27 years old on the Chicago Bears, and Devin Lloyd is 25 on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, you're going to see a trend here. These top 10 guys, a lot of them are going to be linebackers. Because, again, it gives us that stable baseline of points there when we're getting tackling machines. So, the younger these guys are, the better they are in Dynasty Fantasy Football. TJ Edwards, 27 years old with Chicago, just signed a contract with them, so he's not going anywhere. And he had 90 tackles this year and 7 passes deflected, similar to a Fred Warner light type. This guy's all over the field. So TJ Edwards, definitely going to be a good option in fantasy moving forward. And then a guy like Devin Lloyd at 6 with Jacksonville. Again, age is a factor. He's a recent draft pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think Devin Lloyd's got a bright future as well because he is also a tackling machine, as you can see on the screen right here. Number 7, Christian Harris, and number 8, Ernest Jones. Christian Harris, 23 years old, playing for the Houston Texans, and Ernest Jones, 24 years old, playing for the Los Angeles Rams. Both young players, and both under their rookie contracts. It's a great start. First of all, Houston's defense is going to continue to just get better under DeMeco Ryans. I think that he's developing that defense, and I think that he sees Christian Harris as a very valuable piece of this defense right here. So Christian Harris, I think that with more time in another offseason, with DeMeco Ryans and under that system, he's just going to continue to grow in fantasy football. And then I think the same thing with Ernest Jones with the Rams. They're in kind of a rebuilding phase on that whole team, specifically with the defense. A lot of that defense with the Super Bowl, they're gone. Aaron Donald's the last one there. So this defense is rebuilding. I think Ernest Jones has shown himself to be a very quality piece of the defense. And the guy is obviously getting us plenty of fantasy points just by tackling alone. Number 9, Quay Walker. And number 10, Dre Greenlaw. Quay Walker, 23 years old, Green Bay Packers. And Dre Greenlaw, 26, with the San Francisco 49ers. So Quay Walker is just young. He's on the Packers, first round pick, is quickly becoming the anchor point of that defense. Quay Walker has been very good so far, and very much a contributor for the Green Bay Packers. How diverse is he as a player? I think that still remains to be seen a little bit, just because he's more of a tackler. But I do think that if he gets a 17-game season next year, he's going to continue to develop in IDP. And then with Dre Greenlaw just in a situation where he's on a great defense with the San Francisco 49ers, and he's under contract with them, and I see him being a top contributor on this defense for years to come. Dre Greenlaw is just a massive piece of that defense with San Francisco. I don't see him going anywhere. Our first descent. I've got Max Crosby at 11 and Kyle Hamilton at 12. Max Crosby, 26 years old, obviously a Raider, and Kyle Hamilton, 22 years old with the Baltimore Ravens. To start out with Max Crosby, obviously sacks worth 6 points, as we discussed earlier, in IDP 1-2-3 scoring format. You know, this guy is not TJ Watt level, where he's getting like 20 sacks a year. That's hard to do. I think he's getting there. I mean, all he's done is continue to improve. He's under contract with them under a massive contract, so you know they're not getting rid of him. And Max Crosby also does plenty of tackling as well. Max Crosby averaged 14 fantasy points per game this past year because he had 55 tackles as well. He had a solid baseline. So if you had a solid baseline of around 40 to 50 tackles per season, you're going to do well just because of the fact that you can get 14 and a half sacks per year. Max Crosby, I think, just continues to improve. He's an excellent playmaker for that defense. And Kyle Hamilton being the first defensive back on this list is just a credit to how great of a football player he is. 13 fantasy points per game this past year. And again, the difference that this guy has over the typical safety, he plays everywhere. Kyle Hamilton is just an excellent football player. This guy is making plays every level of the field, whether it's at the line of scrimmage, whether it's the second level of the defense, or whether it's in the deep zone. Kyle Hamilton's all over the field. 3 sacks, 13 passes deflected, 4 interceptions, a defensive touchdown. Just an excellent football player. I love Kyle Hamilton. The age is there, and the defense he's on is certainly very, very good. Boys side, Alie and Jessie Bates at 13 and 14. Alie is 28 years old with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and Jessie Bates is 26 of the Atlanta Falcons. So you can see on the screen, Foysad Alie was a top player in fantasy this past year in IDP. 16.2 fantasy points per game because he's a tackling machine. This guy takes tackling machine to a whole new level. He is a true tackling artist right here. 111 tackles and also plenty involved around the defense. 2.5 sacks and 6 pass deflected and interception, a couple forced fumbles and fumble recoveries. Alie's good. The question is, he's 28 years old. How much longer is he going to be that good? Because in fantasy right now, for the next couple years, I'll take this level of production over a lot of guys that we're about to go over. And Jessie Bates is just young. He's becoming a center point of that defense, and he's a freaking playmaker, man. Jessie Bates is just a total package playmaker. He gets 89 tackles last year, 11 passes deflected, 6 interceptions, and 14 fantasy points per game in IDP. This guy's all over the place, man. And he's young. He's going to continue to develop in this defense. I really, really, really like Jessie Bates in Dynasty in IDP. TJ Watt at 15 and Derwin James at 16. TJ Watt is obviously 29 years old. And, you know, that's the problem here and why he's not a little higher. But also there's another problem with TJ Watt as well. I can't ignore this. I mean, TJ Watt, yes, 15.4 fantasy points per game is great. But how much longer is he going to be able to get 19 sacks in a season? I mean, at 29 years old, I love the player. Trust me. I've got Jack Lambert, Pittsburgh Steelers legend, displaying the affection I have for the Steelers. Fantasy football analysis comes first for me. TJ Watt is approaching 30. He'll be 30 mid-season, and it's not like this guy has escaped injury. He missed the playoff game this year against the Bills because of injury. So I do worry about TJ Watt, and that's why he's a little bit lower. And then with Derwin James at 16, 27 years old with the Chargers, I think that Jim Harbaugh is going to want to keep him on his team because he's a good player. And he's very good in fantasy football because he's all over the field. Similar to a Kyle Hamilton type, to where he's kind of all over the place, all over the field at all times. You know, Derwin James, again, I just don't know how frequent we can count on big plays as he approaches his 30s. That's typically the age where safeties start to lose the playmaking ability. They're still smart players, but they lose that athleticism and playmaking ability on a consistent basis. He had just under 13 fantasy points per game this year, and I think the defense looks better overall with Jim Harbaugh there and the defensive coordinator he brings in from Michigan, but I do worry about the trajectory that Derwin James is on in his career at this point in IDP. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah at 17 and Quincy Williams at 18. Owusu-Koramoah is 24 years old, and he'll be an unsigned free agent in this offseason. And Quincy Williams, 27 years old with the Jets. So Owusu-Koramoah obviously has the instability of not being on a team, not being under contract. But Owusu-Koramoah played very, very well for his rookie contract. I mean, Owusu-Koramoah with the Browns was 13.4 fantasy points per game last year and was all over the field on every level. I mean, passes deflected 6, which is crazy for a linebacker. 3.5 total sacks and 71 tackles. Like, I do think that a team will sign him to be a major contributor, and he could become a guy like Foyeside Oluokun, and we could just see this guy have a massive trajectory in IDP Dynasty. I'm not there quite yet. We need to see where he lands. And then Quincy Williams with the Jets, just simply very, very good. A very good addition for the Jets, and he's not going anywhere. He averaged 15 fantasy points per game last year, 95 tackles, was a massive piece of that defense. Quincy Williams is just in a good position to keep on moving up, and I can definitely see his ranking rising for me personally over time, especially in Dynasty. Bobby Okereke and Myles Garrett rounding it out at 19 and 20. Bobby's 27 on the Giants, and listen, who knows exactly what's going to happen with the Giants? My guess is they wouldn't want to get rid of a player who's really good for them. Their defense is probably going to see some changes. Their defensive coordinator, who had a lot of problems with Brian Daboll, he's out of the building now. So this defense is going to be retooled for sure. He's under contract. How likely is it that he sticks around? That's why he's lower on the list. But from a fantasy points per game perspective, he has to be inside the top 20 because he's still young enough to get it done for the next couple seasons at least. And then Myles Garrett at 20, again, it's similar to TJ Watt where it's like, he's 28 years old. How much longer can he do that? I mean, last year was a great year for him, but he didn't stay healthy for a full season, right? So he missed some time. And, you know, with Myles Garrett, the baseline of tackles just isn't as stable as it is for TJ Watt and Max Crosby. 33 tackles in 2023 just isn't going to be enough to get it done. When he only has 14 sacks in one less game, but we need either more sacks or more tackles for Myles Garrett to be higher on this list because he only had 11.2 fantasy points per game in 2023. We need more of one of the two, preferably tackles, because that would give us a good baseline in IDP Dynasty Fantasy Football. So let me know what you think of the rankings in the comments below and what questions you need answered for 2024 Dynasty Fantasy Football. And if you're looking to improve your Dynasty team right now and want to see some buy low trade targets that you can get on the cheap, click on this video right here.